I see no snow. No, it's coming. It is cold as hell out here though. Hey Harvey, say hey, it's on the horn. I know, say hey bud. We're doing on the horn. Yeah, VCU won. I know, what'd you think of the game? What are your comments? He likes snow. He's excited. He's gonna frolic around in it once this starts coming down here. I am wearing a tank top as a bit of a political statement about the storm here, but I am gonna go back inside because it's cold as hell out there. Hi friends, I'm Zach Joachim. This is On the Horn. VCU beat Davidson 75-69 at Belk Arena today. In what's a massive victory for them in terms of the Atlantic 10 hierarchy. Because George Mason lost to Rhode Island earlier today and Dayton lost to St. Joseph's. So VCU moves into a third place tie with Dayton at 5-2 in conference play. Rams are 14-6 overall. And they hold the tiebreaker over Davidson, which is massive because both teams were 4-2 coming into this game, and they do not play again this season. And Phil Martelli, really quick post-game comments there with Robbie and Rodney afterward, because both the men's and women's teams are trying to get on their plane, understandably, to get back to Richmond before this catastrophic, devastating, historic. These are all the words that I've heard to describe this winter storm that's coming in here. But they played on it with a 5 p.m. start at Belk Arena today. And Phil Martelli said, if we defend, we'll win this game, to his team in the huddle down the stretch. And that very much came to fruition. Look, VCU's obviously had defensive struggles for stretches this year. But when it mattered most, I wrote that their much maligned defense stepped up in a gutsy win at Davidson. And I think that's the story here. Because after Davidson cut the deficit to 70-69 after a Sam Brown 3. Sam Brown was great in the second half. He ended up with a team high 18 points to lead the Wildcats. He hit that with 1:26 to play. It's 70-69 VCU. Belk Arena, which I believe the men's and women's coaches both paid for the beers for the fans there today, which was a very cool gesture and a cool bit to get fans out to games, on a day with extreme weather down there. And that crowd was into it at that juncture. And then VCU held Davidson scoreless over the last 2:20. Got some huge stops, played phenomenal defensively in those final minutes there. They've obviously struggled on that end this year at times, but when it mattered most today, they got a huge A10 road win by getting the stops down the stretch. Brandon Jennings and Michael Bell hit some really clutch free throws in those final minutes too. Bell, I think, stepped to the line when it was 70-69, 1-point game with 25 seconds to play, and hit 2 enormous free throws. And then Jennings got a steal on the inbounds with 10 seconds to play. I don't know what Davidson was doing. They just kind of threw it right to him, and with 10.1 seconds to play, and then they all froze and let 8 seconds run off the clock. So I think they were so frustrated at what was a really bad turnover in that moment that they kind of had a brain fart and they didn't think to foul in that moment. And that was ball game there. Lazar Djokovic, game high 20 points. How many free throws did he shoot? Only 4 or 5 at the line, but it seemed like he got to the line in some really clutch moments for VCU. He had 8 rebounds as well. I wrote earlier in the week that I thought he'd be a key in this game because Davidson was going to struggle with his physicality down low, and that certainly ended up being true. He played 35 minutes. That's a team high for VCU. 7 of 10 from the field, like I said, 20 points to lead VCU, which did not spread the scoring out very much today. Only 6 Rams, 1, 2, 3, 4, only 6 VCU players scored, but 5 of them in double figures. So Djokovic, 20, Terrence Hill, 14 points, 4 assists. His distribution continues to be great. That's 12 assists for him in the last 2 games. Michael Bell, 12 points, 8 rebounds to match Djokovic for the team lead on the glass. I'll get to that in a second. I think VCU's rebounding was massive in this game. Tyrell Ward, again, continues to come on, make a huge impact for this team off the bench. He had 10 points, had a little personal 7-0 run there midway through that second half that was really big in helping VCU extend out the lead. I'll get to that sequence in a second here. But Brandon Jennings, 13 points, 3 of 4 at the free throw line, made some huge defensive plays. And those are your 5 VCU players in double figures. And then Barry Evans was also quite good, 6 points, 2 steals, 6 rebounds, and nobody else scored. And VCU, let me get to the rebounding and the team stats numbers. This was largely a back and forth game. Davidson led for, I think, 15 plus minutes of the first half, and then VCU led for most of the second half. I'm going to turn off my TV here because the game just went off and it went to another broadcast there. What's the rebounding numbers? Let's find it. VCU 35-24 edge on the glass. That was massive. They had 14 second chance points. And what are the points in the paint numbers here? I'm looking at, VCU 40-32 edge in the paint. And I think a lot of that was extended possessions on the glass, especially late there. Jokovic and Bell had some huge rebounds in the final sequence to help VCU extend possessions and really bleed the clock, right? They kind of felt to me like, they talk about in football, like a good running game can be your best defense a lot of the time because you keep the ball out of the other team's hands. And I felt like the rebounding kind of functioned as that for VCU late in this game. I think there was 1 or 2 possessions there in the last sequences where VCU got rebounds and just pulled it back out and let the clock bleed out. And I think there was one that took about a minute. It was a VCU possession that had a couple offensive rebounds and took about a minute off the clock. And Davidson's possessions on the other end were just disjointed. And in clutch time, they didn't have the... You okay, Harvey? What are you eating? He's eating a bone right now. That's my biggest issue with my dog. He just eats random stuff off the ground all the time. Anyway, VCU really extended some possessions, was able to keep the ball out of Davidson's hands and keep them out of sorts on the offensive end. What's the offensive rebounding number? Did I already say it? I think VCU had 11 of them. 11 offensive rebounds, 14 second chance points. And let's get to the sequences in the first half here, because VCU leads 4-2 out the gates, right? After a Jennings hook on the left block for 4-2 with 18:40 to play in the first half. And that was their last lead until later in the first half because Davidson kind of kept them at arm's length for much of the first half. Scovins was really good for them. I'm not sure. I could pull it up right now, but his activity was great on the glass. I'm not sure what he finished with, but I think he was big in giving them that lead in the first half. And then they hit threes, right? And that's the big thing against this Davidson team. And that was kind of my worry coming into the game for VCU because the metrics tell you that has been one of VCU's major defensive struggles on the year. They're in the 220s in opponent 3-point percentage and have given up too many easy looks from outside. And Davidson's 52nd in the country, I think, coming into this game in 3-point shooting. So closing out was huge for VCU. They didn't do a great job of it early on. And that's how Davidson built that lead, led by as much as 7 at 27-20. After a Sam Brown drive left through the lane, and he threw one up and it rattled in. I'm going to say his first name every time because they have 2 guys with the last name Brown on their team. But then VCU chipped away throughout the first half. And then Michael Bell rebound, Brandon Jennings drive from the right wing. He finished a lefty floater for 32-31 with about 3 minutes to play in the first half. And that was VCU's first lead since 4-2. So Davidson was really ahead for much of that first half. And then what might have been certainly the biggest shot of the first half, one of the biggest shots of the game, Terrence Hill's step back 3 off the dribble on the right wing, made it 35-31 VCU. And then a great offensive possession where the ball really popped around the perimeter, led to a Jokovic drive, and he drew a foul. He hit both free throws. That's an 11-0 VCU run to close the first half. They go into the break up 37-31. But then they started the second half really sloppy. It was the turnovers. I thought they had 5 of them in the first few minutes of that second half. And that allowed Davidson to erase the deficit. It's 44 up after a Scovins and one on the left block. And although that actually changed to 45-44 VCU because they upgraded a deep Jokovic 2 to a 3. Scovins hit the free throw. It's 45 up. I think there's some ties in there. And then Blooms hits a 3 on the right wing, 50-47 Davidson lead with 11:51 to play. And then came the Tyrell Ward run. And his impact in those moments were massive. He had a catch and shoot 3 on the right wing off of Brandon Jennings' assist. That makes it 50-50 with 11:15 to play. It was right at the end of the shot clock. It was a good defensive possession for Davidson, but Jennings had a great kick to find Ward open on that right wing. And then a Terrence Hill strip led to a Tracy steal, which led to a Ward drive and hanging finish off glass, 52-50. And then 2 possessions later, Ward got free down low, finished through contact for 54-52. That was an and one, but he missed the free throw. But that was huge, I thought. His impact off the bench, his energy. Phil Martelli has talked about how good it has been in practice, and that certainly showed up in games. And then VCU went on their run to seize control, right? Pretty Terrence Hill feed. Again, he's been a great distributor lately to Jokovic in the lane, who hit a leaner. That's 58-54 VCU. And then Phil won a challenge. That's his second in a row after I think he was unsuccessful on his first 6 coaches' challenges of his VCU career. So he's got 2 in a row now. And then Terrence Hill was fouled on a rebound, got to the line. He's been so good at the line all year. I think he's up by 90% for the season. He hit both. That made it 60-54 VCU, matched their largest lead. And then Hill drive from the top of the key. He started to take over a little bit offensively late in this game. Drive from the top of the key, really patient, hit a fadeaway J off glass on the left block for 62-54. That was VCU's largest lead of the game, I think. Yep. 8 points, so 62-54. And then Davidson started to fight back. It was 8 points again after a Hill nasty behind the back dribble, hit a mid-range J on the right shoulder for 66-58. That's with about 5:30 to play. And then Scovenge hit a huge 3 on the right wing to make it 66-61, keep Davidson in shouting distance. Bell drive from the left wing, got into the lane, hit a push shot for 68-61. And then came the sequence there where Brown really took over for them late. Sam Brown, baseline J, 68-63, 3 in the left corner off a great up fake that lost Djokovic on an aggressive closeout. That's 68-66. At that point, Brown had 13 in the second half. He was really keeping Davidson alive here. And then, there's one of those possessions in which VCU just got 2 offensive rebounds, ate up about a minute of clock, ended up in a Djokovic righty hook finish for 70-66. And then the Brown tray for 76-9. We've already talked about what happened after that VCU was able to extend some possessions, chew up some clock, and got huge stops on the defensive end, held Davidson scoreless. After that Brown 3 for 70-69. A Bell rebound, he got to the line with 24 seconds on the clock, hit those 2 free throws, and then VCU got another big stop, and then Brandon hit some clutch free throws, and they end up winning 75-69. Again, that's a massive win for VCU, not only in terms of the Atlantic 10 hierarchy, but I think just in the form that it came and the fact that their defense is what stepped up down the stretch. They'd be the first to tell you, that's what they've got to clean up to realize this team's potential and compete at the top of the A10 is to play better on the defensive end. And I think we saw some of their best defensive sequences of the season late in this game to get a big win at Belk Arena. Everyone stay safe this weekend in this here Snowmageddon that's coming up. I'm sure some people will lose power. I hope too many of us don't, and I hope that we get to keep water this time. That's obviously the big question in Richmond around these days. So VCU 75, Davidson 69, Rams to 14-6, 5-2 in the A10. They've won 3 in a row. Phil said he hopes that place better be rocking on Tuesday against Richmond. And what'll be a big game, and VCU's got momentum now. And like I wrote about a couple of weeks ago, in this soft part of the schedule, I really thought they had a chance to figure things out and put together a run here. That's 3 in a row. They've got some more, what on paper look like winnable games coming up here. And I think they got a real chance to get some momentum. And with the George Mason and Dayton losses today, it looks like, anything as high as that 2 seed right behind St. Louis, which is obviously the class of the A10 right now. God, they look good against Bonaventure yesterday. Absolutely blew the Bonnies out of the water in Olean. I watched some of that game. SLU looks phenomenal. They're deservedly ranked right now. And they're the best team in this conference. But, if VCU can keep this going, I won't take all the time here to get into the at-large conversation. I don't think it's done. Mathematically, VCU can't, lose any of these games coming up here against opponents that they should beat. But if you can keep momentum going here, win the games that you're going to be favored to win on paper. You have some big home games against Dayton and G-Dub coming up. But if you can take what would at that juncture be a 10-game winning streak into the game at St. Louis and SLU keeps winning, then that's a massive road opportunity. Harvey's playing with his toy right now. Can you guys see him? Yeah. Anyway, then that'd be a massive game at St. Louis. That's getting way too far ahead of things. VCU's got a lot of work to do between now and then, but I do think they're still on the periphery of the at-large conversation. If they can stay hot, keep this winning streak going, then they might have a chance to be in the bubble talk later in the season here. Rams to 14-6, 5-2 A10. This is On the Horn. I'm Zach Joachim. Y'all rock. Thank you so much for following the coverage and tuning in. And I'll catch you Tuesday for the Capital City Classic against Richmond, which is always a lot of fun. It'll be at the Siegel Center. I'll see you there, friends.